Trying to get good. About 5 minutes. Yeah, and I'm ready. All right, all right, all right, all right. Get it on till I. What's going on, Kansas City? You now listening to What's Real, Real Talk, 98.5 KUAW. As always, the calling number is area code 816-599-6893. And I have Charles Johnson in the studio. We're going to jump right in because we're going to hit everything that's going to happen, at least here locally in Kansas City, Missouri, and talk a little bit about voter suppression, voters' rights, and why people should actually be getting involved and paying attention to the elections and what's actually going on. How you doing, Charles?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. Doing great, man. The Chiefs winning. I'm looking like Chiefs. Everything is good, man. Everything is good.
It's kind of weird turning on the Chiefs and watching them score at will when they want to score. I'm not used to that.
Explosive.
Yeah.
Explosive.
I remember the days of Elvis Gerback.
Don't hate, bro.
Yeah,
Don't
I
hate.
mean,
Don't
spent
hate.
a lot of Sundays at home upset, mad at myself for watching the game again.
We got a young brother doing his thing now, man. He's doing his thing.
No, I'm liking Patrick, man. I'm liking the fact that he can throw the ball while he's running. He doesn't really trip off anything.
From the hood.
Yeah, they have a high-powered offense. But getting right to the topics. So I want to start off talking about a little voter suppression.
Yes, sir.
You know why I want to start off talking about voter suppression?
We need it.
Well, not only are we seeing voter suppression, but we also have an amendment up that's coming up this Tuesday. Amendment 1. Amendment 1 would deal with redistricting. Now what we've been seeing nationally and in various states is we've been seeing various laws, and Missouri isn't independent when it comes from these various laws of voter suppression. So here in Missouri, we passed a voter ID law that was actually challenged in court. And I want to start off the segment with that, saying that if you don't have your ID here in Missouri, you will be allowed to vote as long as you was pre-registered 30 days before the election. Even though we have a voter ID law that's in place here, and it was actually passed for voter suppression.
When you say no ID, that means they would not have to have no form of ID at all, even though it was pre-registered.
Well, as long as
how do I know who you are?
But now that's what I'm saying. As long as you pre-register, and then you assign an affidavit.
Okay.
Which is similar to anything, right? I legally signed that I am who I am, and it's underneath perjury, and it's a felony if I lie on it, etc. So it's actually a clean process. But in Georgia, we're seeing the effects of voter suppression. So when we look at these voter ID laws, we look at laws that are being constructed to ensure that certain demographics of people don't come out. But why is this important? It's important because we have Amendment 1 coming up on this ballot this Tuesday. Full disclosure, I'm 100% against Amendment 1. I have no appetite to support Amendment 1, and I'll tell you why. In Amendment 1, they have various actions that take place in this bill. One of the actions is that it restricts campaign donations to $2,600. On face value, that's not a problem, but that's already law. It doesn't create a new cap on that. It creates caps or limits on lobbyist gifts. I believe it caps it at like $5 or something of that nature. Now the gifts have a double-listed meaning. Some people hear the gifts and they think legislators and people in offices taking all of these trips and going to the Bahamas, et cetera, et cetera. What they fail to realize is I get $2,000 or $2,500 a year in gifts to bring kids up from Kansas City to Jeff City. That's how I pay for the buses for the Malcolm X Day. So the gifts aren't as atrocious as the campaign donations and dark money that we're not talking about, that Clean Missouri is not concerned about. What they're having theirs is that they want to cap it at 26. They want to make it illegal to hold fundraisers on state property, i.e. people, it's already illegal for any elected official to hold a fundraiser. I couldn't hold a fundraiser in front of the governor's in front of the governor's office at the Capitol. Couldn't do it in my office. Couldn't do it in the first floor rotunda. Right? It's illegal for us to accept any type of gifts like that in the Capitol. Right? Lobbyists can't even give gifts in the Capitol. Another thing that they have in there is that they want to make public meetings transparent. It's already transparent. Anytime that you get a quorum of elected officials in the room. So give you an example at the city council level, if you get 7 members in the room, that's a guaranteed quorum. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Yep, everything that they discuss is open underneath the sunshine law. At the state, you get 70 of us from the House in the room together, 82 of us from the House in the room together, constitutes a quorum all day long. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Same with the school board and any other elected body. So the only thing that I found in Amendment 1 that isn't currently law is altering the redistricting process. Now, this becomes extremely dangerous when we talk about the potential for voter suppression and diluting the turnout. So in Amendment 1, they have 2 clauses. One clause says that they cannot violate the 1965 Voting Rights Act, right? Meaning they can't dilute so-called minority districts. The other thing in there says that there has to draw equal or as equal partisan districts as they can. So to give people an example, my district goes from Truce almost to Sterling Road in Independence, Missouri. My DPI, my Democratic number in that district is around 93%. So in order to get my district equal with the potential of partisan representation, you're going to have to draw me further out in Eastern Jack because I almost come up to Sterling Road, which is significant when you look at representation and who lives where and also voter turnout. And it fundamentally alters the way. You got a question or something that you want to ask? I'm looking at the way you're looking at it.
No, I'm listening, man. I'm listening.
All right. So why is districting important? Well, now we're talking about representation. So in the state of Missouri, if we do nothing and we look at it on racial lines, if we do nothing right now, we have so-called minority representation in the Senate. I believe we have 4 or 5 black senators currently, and we have 2 on the congressional level, 2 congressmen on the congressional level. You start changing the way these districts is drawn, not only do you dilute the so-called minority representation, you dilute turnout, because turnout is not the same east of Truce as it is in certain other parts. And there's no way of doing both of them. You can draw the districts without diluting the minority numbers, but you can't do it without diluting the turnout in my effect. So I'm 100% against Amendment 1. I think it's a ploy to come in here and control the way elections are administrated and who gets what. Because when we talk about politics, we're talking about the order of war, right? Politics is war without bloodshed, and war is bloody politics. And redistricting gives you your battlefield. So if anybody has any questions, hit me up. Again, you listen to What's Real, Real Talk, KUAW. The call-in number is area code 816-599-6893. If you're listening to this and watching this on my Facebook feed, I'll always encourage people to go to the KUAW LPFM 98.5 Facebook page because you will have an integrated video and audio experience, and it's a little cleaner than on my Facebook feed. You got any questions or concerns about that one?
No, that's good education. It was very educational and very informative for those who don't know about Amendment 1. I know basically all week that's what you've been doing, kind of hitting different spots in the city and educating the people on the various issues that's on about it. It's beautiful.
Well, it's a lot going on this election, and it's a lot of orchestration going on.
Yes.
Right. So if you look at the county questions, and I'm kind of jumping because I want people to call in. If not, I'm just going to kind of rant and rave on what I think is politicians running wild down here. So questions 1 through 7 on the ballot coming up this year, dealing with the county, does everything from stripping the county executive's office of veto powers. It increases the legislative pay, the wages. It calls for term limits. One of the questions says that the executive couldn't hire his own counselor, and the legislature would be able to get rid of the counselors.
I wonder if Frank White wasn't actually the county legislator right now, will we be dealing with this issue? Because I actually think it's an issue that's geared towards him personally. I think it's a personal issue. That's Charles' personal opinion. I often wonder if someone else was sitting in that seat, will we be seeing that on that particular issue on the ballot?
I don't think it would be on there. I remember when I was a kid, it was a cat that used to come on named Johnny Carson, right? And he used to put a little thing on his head, and he like, if I right.
Yeah.
So if I was Johnny Carson, I would get in my soothsayer mindset, and I would say we wouldn't see any of this legislation. All of this legislation is personally targeted towards executive office.
Correct.
And I want to caution everybody that's voting on these county questions 1 through 7 to ask yourself, what form of governance would we have if a legislative body had all of the control and the executive office didn't even have the ability to veto stuff?
That's crazy.
No, I mean it's insulting as a voter. It's insulting because you're telling me that the person that I elect citywide, not district wide, the person I elect citywide doesn't have a say. So let's say that I live in the first district, right? And your representative is somebody in the third district. Well, your representative is concerned about third district issues. They're not concerned about first district
That's
issues.
true.
Now, the person that's voted on by the entire city is supposed to be responsible to the entire city. But you want to strip that office of the ability to go into contracts. You want to strip that office of the ability to be able to do line item vetoes. You want to strip that office of being able to hire counselors. You want to strip that office of being able to control county.
But I'm gonna give you some more money. Since I took all that away from you, I'll give you some more money.
Yeah, I couldn't figure that one out.
Yeah.
I've never been in a. I mean, I wish I had a job. They was like, you know what, Brandon, we're gonna take all your job duties away from you. You ain't got to worry about it no more. Like it was a time when I was a janitor. I wish when I was a janitor.
Oh, you used to be a janitor?
I know I used to be a janitor. Yeah, I was a janitor for about maybe a year and a half, something like that. Yeah, management conflicts.
Okay.
But I wish when I was a janitor, they would have came to and they was like, you know what, Ellington, you don't need to buff the floors or mop or wash windows or anything like that. We're going to take all of those duties away from you and we're going to increase your pay. Right? They wouldn't do that because it makes no sense. And I'm hoping that the voters are smarter than the county legislators' playmanship and don't give away democracy at a county level. If you don't like the executive or the legislators, vote them out. Don't change the process in which it is no control only to the legislative body. I mean, that's horrific. Then we got some state issues coming up. We have two constitutional amendments, one statutory amendment dealing with legalizing medicinal marijuana. Where you at on any of these? You got any thoughts on them before I go in?
It's a tough issue. You know, when you're really looking at the three of them, you really have to read what those issues are. Just don't look at the word marijuana. We're going to legalize marijuana because out of the three, there's a couple that I don't believe is no good for us in the community.
Now I'm about to jump right into it. I do got to hit this one. You're 100% right. The last issue was turning over the jail to the sheriff. Now this goes back to the county questions. Turning the jail over to the sheriff is a bigger issue than what people are talking about because the county has currently been talking about building a new correctional facility, right? And most of the plans that I've seen of this new correctional facility would be out towards Eastern Jack. Now this makes politically and socially, this has a lot of implications, right? So when it talks about corrections, we're talking about employment and we're talking about dollars. Now I don't necessarily agree with the heavy employment mantra, but if we do a new bill, we're talking about building the building, which goes to constructors, contractors, etc. We're talking about CEOs that would be employed at that facility, the whole gambit, tax credits to build it, and all of this good stuff. But what we're not talking about is what happened to our tax dollars the last 30 years that allowed the jail to be in such a condition that it needs to be overturned and rehauled, and who is ultimately going to oversee this? Should the oversight remain with the county, or should it go to the sheriff's office?
Yeah, that's a big issue.
Should it remain with the taxation agency, or should it be removed? Me personally, again, I'm against all of the county questions because I don't think none of the county questions has anything to do with benefiting the citizens. They also have a segment in one of the questions dealing with the combat tax, where they want
Right.
to turn the combat tax over to the prosecutor's office. Well, I believe that the voters should be more or curious about what is happening with the combat dollars. Why would you want to take it out of the control of the legislative body and put it over to the prosecutor's office? And what has been happening with those program dollars
Before.
in the past?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the combat tax was something that was passed in 1988. It's a unique tax to Jackson County. So why do we have high murder rates and high crime when the combat tax is designated and is designed to be beneficial to organizations and groups and things to alleviate the lack thereof, as opposed to ignoring the lack thereof?
Yeah, that's the main issue there, that combat. Who's controlling that money? One side want the prosecutor, the other side want the county legislator. It's a lot of money being there.
Yeah,
A lot of money.
No, it's a lot of money. The same with the excessive marijuana tax. I'm just reading direct questions and jumping right into it. So with the marijuana, medical marijuana taxation, there's 3 different zones. One calls for a 4% tax, which would be Constitutional Amendment 1. Amendment 2, excuse me. And I'm actually supporting that one. That's the one I'm actually the most comfortablest with. And they also have a description of the type of elements that people would be able to qualify for. And one of those elements would be intractable migraines. And I always say that when
Intractable migraines.
Yeah, no, because I'm amazed.
Are you speaking of migraine headaches?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's untrackable.
Okay.
Not the ones that you can see on the scanner,
All right.
but the ones we couldn't prove that you was having it all. And I always find it interesting that they put that in there. But Constitutional Amendment 2, that would go to the Veterans Commission, which is something that's regulated at the state, something that we would actually, in my opinion, easily be able to track the dollars. It should be transparent, and it's only a 4% tax. By it being a constitutional amendment, what that means is it will preserve the right for folks that want to utilize medicinal marijuana constitutionally. So we couldn't alter that, and the we would be the General Assembly and the governor. We wouldn't be able to alter any of the language in there. So again, going back to the untrackable migraines, we wouldn't be able to define that, because that was the language that the voters
voted on. Right.
As opposed to Amendment C. Prop C. Prop C would actually legalize medicinal marijuana, but that's a statutorial change. So that's the major difference between the constitutional amendments, Amendment number 2, and Prop C. If Prop C passes the legislative body, we can alter whatever language we want in there. We can literally strip all the language out. We can create whatever rubrics we want. We can create whatever elements we want, which is different than the constitutional amendment number 2. Constitutional amendment number 3 has a 14 or 15%. 14, it's horrible. Has a 14 or 15% tax on it. And it also says that it will go to a medical research facility to research cancer. What it doesn't say is who controls this research center. What it also doesn't clearly say is, it says it, but it doesn't say it clearly where people are just looking at it, is that Brad Bradshaw will be the person that administrates the licensing. Well, this is somebody that's about to draw himself in the Constitution that hasn't been elected. He's not responsible to the voters, and he would be constitutionally responsible for at least $66 million of tax dollars. And he's a non-government entity.
It's a lot of money for one person to control.
Though it's a lot of money
for one person to control.
And then he gets to decide which research institute
that money's going towards.
Yeah, and if you actually read the language, it says create. It doesn't say fund an existing research facility.
So he can create anything to funnel that right back to himself.
If I was Brad Bradshaw, and the amendment is the Brad Bradshaw amendment, that's what it says, and I got my amendment in the Constitution that said the Brandon Ellington Amendment, you better believe that the research facility that you're going to
It's gonna be the Brandon Ellington.
I mean, it's gonna have either one. It may just have Ellington, it may have Brandon Ellington in there, but I'm gonna control it, right? And I'm gonna be the doctor of it too, and I'm gonna be the attorney because I'm a doctor and attorney, right? So he got everything covered. So from his standpoint, it's actually brilliant. Like I can't knock the hustle because when I seen it, I was like, boy, he's about to hustle the entire state of Missouri if he can get this passed. Because this is not something that is beneficial when it comes to legalizing medicinal marijuana. This is something that is beneficial when it comes to controlling who get licenses, which goes back to the topic suppression, right? We started off talking about voter suppression, but voting on an amendment that gives all of the authority to somebody to regulate it to somebody that is not governmentally bound or transparent is suppression. Because when we look at the states that have actually legalized medicinal marijuana and then followed up by legalizing recreational marijuana, how many so-called minority entities is in existence?
Zero.
Yeah, I mean, they're almost non-existent across the board, right? Because when we talk about voting, we're talking about who controls what. And this is why, and I'm jumping back and forth because I'm trying to give people a full understanding. But this is why Amendment 1, again, going back to Clean Missouri, the constitutional amendment is extremely important. And I'm a no on that a constitutional amendment because it alters the way that we redistrict. And the way that we redistrict goes to who's going to represent what, which goes to either voter suppression or overt voter engagement. And I believe we will see more voter suppression than anything. Because none of these amendments that I've seen has the heart of the citizens in concern, with the exception of Amendment 4, right? Amendment 4. That's the bingo amendment.
Yeah, bingo.
That's the only one that I feel comfortable saying that we're trying to do something for people, because what it does is it changes the regulations on when you can conduct a bingo game. So as opposed to being a member and having to waiting 2 years before I can administer a bingo game, I will be able to do it pretty much immediately. It has no cost to the state, no cost to local jurisdictions. When it came through the body, the General Assembly, I voted yes on it. The reason it's coming in front of the voters is because when you talk about gifts and gambling, that's something that is constitutional. So we don't have the right to legalize gifts or gambling unless it's a constitutional change. So that's why that's actually on there. The next proposal, let me do a station break. You're listening to What's Real Talk, KUAW. The call-in number, as always, is area code 816-599-6893. If you're listening to this or watching this on my Facebook page, you can always go to the KUAW LPFM 98.5 Facebook page, and you have an integrated video and audio experience, which is a little cleaner and easier to watch. You got anything you want to throw in, Charles?
Oh, I just want to tell the voters to first actually get out and vote. But before you actually get out and vote, know what you're voting for. Educate yourself. Read. If I know it's been various forums throughout the community for the last week or so. Everyone should have attended one of those or not to be knowledgeable of what the issues are on the ballot, the various language that some of us don't understand. We're getting a definition of what that word means. But it's very important Tuesday to get out and vote. Whatever way you go, cast your vote.
I know you got to come out Tuesday because Missouri is actually being looked at nationally this Tuesday.
Yes.
And again, I'm sticking with the subject of voter suppression. We're being looked at for our Senate race. So in our Senate race, we got Senator Claire McCaskill running against our current Attorney General Josh Hawley. Right? This is supposed to be the Goliath upon Goliath of voting. But what difference does it make to marginalized voters? Does it make any difference if we get Hawley or if we get McCaskill in office to marginalized voters? I'm not talking about partisan.
Right.
Partisanship, yeah, it makes all the difference in the world if you have a Democrat or Republican, because that goes into leveraging the Democratic platform or the Democratic Party. But as far as marginalized voters, poor black folks, poor white folks, poor Latinos, people that stay in the inner city of Kansas City, St. Louis, Springfield, St. Joe.
Columbia.
Yeah, Columbia. Well, Columbia is out doing a little bit better than the rest.
Are they doing a little better?
Yeah, when it comes to access and all this stuff. But what difference does it make when we talk about our senator? And I'm asking this because I think this is becoming a negative anchor on this election that's coming up November the 6th. Like when we talk about the medicinal marijuana issues, you hear excitement from people across the political spectrum, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. But when we talk about the Senate race, you don't hear that same enthusiasm.
No, zero. Yeah.
And one of the things that I was cautioning some of my colleagues with last night is that I think the Democrats are going to be embarrassed come November because we have the Clean Missouri Initiative that's not really drumming up folks in the inner city because they're talking about things that are irrelevant to us, with the exception of the redistricting. Now, the redistricting has myself against it. I believe the congressman in St. Louis has came out against it. I believe our state senator has came out against it. I believe that our congressman has recently opposed it. I'm not 100% sure about our congressman. I know the congressman in St. Louis has came out against it. So now you have all these black elected officials that are coming out saying, hey, we're not voting for this, which goes to voter turnout in so-called minority districts. You have a state senator that's taking a picture with every black and brown person that they can, but people are looking at that like, this is a joke. Right? So what's going to happen this November? Are we going to have a changing at the senatorial level, which can affect everything. Or maybe it won't.
We'll see.
And I say maybe it won't because when we talk about things as voter ID, which we passed here in the state of Missouri, or when we talk about things as the minimum wage, or when we talk about things that deny people access to the political process, like felons being able to run for office, which would where has our federal people been?
Nowhere.
I don't think.
When we talk about the medicinal and recreational marijuana,
Our federal people haven't been.
yeah, when we talk about the criminal justice hook on marijuana usage when it comes to so-called minority communities,
You know, that's an issue that has not been discussed right there, right?
but that's what we're talking about on here. This is what's real talk.
Yeah, that hasn't been touched at all. Yeah, the ratification is just going to come behind that.
But we got to get more involved. Like we can't just tell people to vote and be happy about voting. That's ignorance. You vote and then you get engaged. You vote and you pay attention. Like Proposition D. Proposition D is the fuel tax. Why are we voting on the fuel tax? When we pay taxes already for infrastructure at the state level.
That's true.
The state is responsible for your bridges and highways. And I don't know if you figured it out by now or not, but I'm 100% against Prop D. So I'm 100% against Prop D. I'm 100% against Amendment 3. I'm 100% against questions 1 through 7 of the county charter, because all of these are initiatives that seek to either alter democracy or burden the taxpayer with something they shouldn't be burdened with, like Proposition D, which is the fuel tax. So you have city officials coming out. We got to pass this. This would be good for us. What you been doing with our money? And why do we need to pass this to fix some stuff that we already got money to fix? Well, on the state end, you looking at carve-outs of tax dollars that went to facilities like CERN, which is off of 87th and Blue Ridge, 87th and Bannister. That's a large facility. That's a lot of tax dollars, a lot of city dollars intertwined in there. And I'm not saying that Cerner as a corporation and a company isn't beneficial to the city of Kansas City. What I'm saying is that the majority of folks that live in the city of Kansas City can't drive past Cerner, right? Because they got it blocked off. They're not going to work at Cerner, but their tax dollars
is going to help support Cerner.
Yeah, it's going there. But why aren't these tax dollars being used to maintain the infrastructure that is overtly used by the citizens? Why are we cutting taxes, giving it to corporations, and then turning around saying, hey, yeah, you know that Buck O'Neill Bridge? We ain't got no money to fix that. So, we're going to have to increase our fuel tax. Or, our highways, we got more potholes in Kansas. and we can't really fix that. So we need you to give us some more money. But then you just cut $300 million out of education and rework the foundation formula. What happened to that extra $300? $300 million. You gave that to the smart. Okay, got you. But we want to go back to the voters. So again, I'm asking the voters to actually be concerned. Share no electronic ballots. Sales tax. Which sales tax are you talking? Oh, the highway. Yeah. The scooters. You got me on that. I don't know who's paying for these scooters. So I'm not going to say that's state or city dollar. I think that's actually a private enterprise, but you have me on that. So I don't want to give you an answer that I can't
the
prove.
Scooters that are around.
Yeah, somebody just asked, why did they spend all the money on them scooters?
That's probably some private entity that's.
Yeah, I have no idea about the scooters. I know I find it funny that, and again, I probably shouldn't say this, but I know I find it funny that I'm seeing them on Prospect and Paseo.
Everywhere.
Because every time I roll past, I'm like, man, this ain't a good idea, man. You just leaving the scooter right
but
here.
they got little GPSs on them and everything. They come and pick them up, recharge.
Yeah, but it's just the fact
They
that,
in right here.
man, I'm driving down 55th and I see a scooter sitting in the grass. Like, who does that, man?
That was Uber coming home.
But again, I think that's a private enterprise, so I can't really talk about that. But I do know that your state dollars have been diverted when it comes to infrastructure. I also know that we've had 3 governors, starting with our Democratic governor, former Democratic governor Jay Nixon, followed up by our aggressive. How do I want to say this? Followed up by our. I'm on the radio and I'm
political.
Yeah, now I gotta watch my words. Followed by our questionable governor. I want to say another word, but I'm not sure if I can get away with it on the radio. But questioned by a governor that almost was at the level of a rapist. If not, if he hasn't passed. Yeah, former Governor Greitens, he did nothing about it. Governor Nixon did nothing about it. And now our new Governor Parsons, he's not touching the issue either. We're trying to bypass what's politically unappealing. And I say it's politically unappealing because a lot of the folks that I work with, they get various donations from large corporations that benefit off of tax dollars, tax allocations, right? Tax credits, tax incentives. So it's not attractive to say, hey, we're not going to give you no money because we're going to actually use this on the citizens that live here, that work here, that the government is dependent on their tax dollars, and we have a social contract with them to do something. It's not really appealing for folks in office to do that.
I know you kind of hit all the issues on there, but
almost
you always leave that library one. You always leave that library one out. You know, I'm a little partial with that library. So
now let's go ahead and get into it because it's funny you said that the library tax, all the money library tax will all the money go to it. Well, yeah, they missed it too. I don't know. What do you know about the library tax, Charles?
I don't know. I hope it all goes to it because I actually think, well, I can speak for the one library right here in our area that I constantly utilize it from social perspective, business wise. I hope it all goes there. I don't know all the language that's in that ballot right there pertaining to the library. I haven't really read it in depth and educated myself on it, but it's something I think we actually need to look at. When it comes to taxes, any form of taxes, you know, the hair raises up on her neck.
Oh yeah,
just with that little 3-letter word. If it all is actually going to that entity, I think it's a great idea. Seriously.
And see, I'm in my impressions today, so I have to do my George W. Bush. Now, no taxes. So when it comes to taxes, I have to I have to align myself with the cats that I work with that consider themselves libertarian.
Okay,
right. So when it comes to the library, I think we do need to ensure that the library is getting the type of funding that it needs. Okay. But that goes back to, again, us being engaged in suppression, right? And the reason I say it goes back to us being engaged in suppression, if you live on the east side of Kansas City, you pay tax dollars. The city has a mechanism called TIF, which is tax increment finance. So if you live on the east side of Kansas City, a lot of your tax dollars has been diverted in TIF projects that you probably would never go to. right? Because there's no
That's true. That's true.
transit infrastructure to get there unless you have a car that you can drive, right? So if you're taking TIF dollars, which is tax increment finance, and you're using this for projects, what does TIF dollars do to the library? Well, TIF dollars affects the library and the school district
That's true.
because you're talking about your local taxation that would be accompanied mess that word up. Thank you. Killed that word. That would
Just
go
like the
along
cab.
with, yeah, I killed that word. They're like the cab. I blame that on public schools, right? And the tips that they use that would have gave me a proper English course. If you listen to What's Real Talk, KUAW, the calling number is area code 816-599-6893. If you're listening to this or watching this on my Facebook page feed, know you can go to the KUAW LPFM 98.5 page and you will have an integrated video and audio experience.
Now
So
that-
back to my
that was a public school voice,
that was a public school voice,
grammar and everything.
right? Graduated from Brazil.
Mighty proud.
And I got a little parochial in me too, man. I went to Bishop Hogan. So all my Hogan Knights out there. But going back to the taxation of the tips. All right. So if we wasn't depleting our local tax dollars using tip projects that are outside of the inner city, we wouldn't be depleting school district dollars,
Right.
and library dollars. And there's certain ways that we can do tips where they don't do it. So from a state level, this is a self plug. So from a state level, I've been working on legislation that will require all TIF projects in the state of Missouri to be voted on. Right now, one of the issues with this bill was some of my Republican colleagues, not the ideal of requiring taxation. I mean, a vote on TIF projects. It was the fact that I was doing it for the entire state. So they came to and they was like, "Hey, Ellington, we got issues with TIFs and we got issues with the way cities use TIFs, etc. But this is going to hurt us in some of the rural areas because of the population, demographics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And I was like, "Hey, man, I ain't got no problem in it." So I think we will be seeing some drastic legislation at the state level. Senator Koenig filed something a year ago when he was in the House before he became a senator. I was a co-sponsor on that bill. We actually passed that deal with the eastern part of the state out there by certain areas in the county of St. Louis. But we need to do something for the city of Kansas City and St. Louis. And I think if we do something of that nature, we don't have to raise taxes for library levies, et cetera, because we're no longer using our local taxation incentives to deplete the areas. And it's ways that the city can actually codify inside of ordinances and different things when it comes to new bills, et cetera, that certain dollars is donated that doesn't cost the taxpayers more money. And if we can get to that point if we stop suppressing ourselves by not voting for people that are going to be beneficial to us and not themselves.
Okay.
And again, you listen to What's Real Talk. The call-in number is area code 816-599-6893. If you're watching this on my Facebook page, you can always go to the KUAW LPFM 98.5. You can get an integrated feed. You got anything else you want to hit on the fuel tax before I move on?
No, you can keep going. You keep going. The road that I traveled is pretty smooth today. Coming down the road.
I would ask himself, didn't that man in the KC jersey manage at Gates?
Gates what?
Gates,
Speaking of Gates Barbecue?
yeah, Gates. I guess I'm pretty sure
man, that's Kansas City's own, man. That's some of the best barbecue in town.
Did he owe you some money from there?
No, he didn't owe me any money.
No, I'm reading the question. I'm just trying to make sure. They was like, didn't that man in the KC jersey manage at Gates?
Yes.
So somebody on here is seeing you and they know you.
Yes. Yes, that man did. Yes, that man did. It was my platform, my stepping stone to get to where I'm at today.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Nah, plug for Gates. I like Gates too, man. He hires folks in the community that people wouldn't necessarily hire.
Yes.
Even though I haven't got them out to my job here.
They were there in spirit.
Now that was a shout out to George. I had to do it. I hope he sees it. I had to do it. Or Collins watching. I hope he sees it. We've been waiting on you. All right. So the fuel tax. I'm gonna know on the fuel tax. Not that we don't need the money for the fuel tax. I just again think it's an extra burden. The library tax. Personally, I'm gonna know on it. Not saying that the library doesn't need money. I just think the city has been doing a horrible job of depleting local school district dollars and library funds, and then they always go back to the voter. TIF is supposed to be used for blighted areas. This is 100% true. The problem with that understanding is the understanding of blight, though. So the legal definition of blight is undeveloped, right? So anything that is underdeveloped can be considered blighted. So that means if you don't have, you got a couple hundred acres of land, that's blighted. Nothing's there. It needs to be built. So when we look at the language that TIF is supposed to be used for blighted areas, that's 100% true. And we typically think of blight as the dilapidated buildings,
Correct.
These houses that need to be fixed, these trashy buildings that's half hanging, and that is blight.
Okay.
But blight is also undeveloped areas. So this is how TIFs have been able to been utilized outside of areas that would make it beneficial to creating economic density.
Off a broad word.
Yeah, no, it is. It is.
Broad.
And that's a good and a bad thing.
Right.
It's a good and a bad thing. And I'm saying this and going right to the question. It's a good and a bad thing because going back to that bill I was talking about, the one that I'm trying to require all TIF projects to be voted on, I was working on amending the definitions of blight. But that becomes hard and dangerous, right? So if I change the definition to only say that it can be in certain zones, then that knocks out developing in other areas that could be beneficial, right? To creating connectors in local cities. So if I use Kansas City as an example, we can actually create connectors in between Northland and south of the river if we choose to, or we cannot. We can continue to do what we're doing. So again, you're 100% right about the definition that blight is supposed to be TIF is supposed to be used for blighted areas. The problem is the definition of blight. The definition of blight. But some of these things you don't want to tie down into a singular definition because then it alters who can utilize the law. I think it would be more cautious or better for people if we actually had a process in which voters had to say in which projects was actually going to be approved. Example, Power and Light. That's a TIF project. It's a TIF project that's losing money.
Yes.
Right. Personally, I don't go to the Power and Light.
Not only that, Zona Rosa.
Yeah, no, Zona Rosa too.
Right now.
Zona Rosa too. Now, Zona Rosa isn't losing the city as much money as Power and Light. And that's why I didn't use on, but you're right. I'm gonna stick on Power and Light real quick to prove it. Oh no, we have Tyrone Gathers in the studio, ladies and gentlemen. And the camera just happened to be that way. And I hope you pay for those hot chips, brother. I hope.
We just had a phone call from Michelle Shelton, and she says, thank you. Y'all doing a good job. Everything is informative, the voting, and she just loves what y'all doing here on the show.
Now,
we
thank
appreciate it. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Now, thank you. I don't know if people were seeing, but we're trying to reformat it a little bit, make it a little more informal, but as
informative as well.
Yeah, as informative and a little bit funner. Have a little bit of fun with as we're doing it. So I definitely appreciate that. I definitely appreciate it because you never know who's watching, who's listening. And again, you watching What's Real Talk, KUAW 98.5. The call-in number, as always, is area code 816-599-6893. If you're watching this on my Facebook page, you can always go to the KUAW LPFM 98.5 page. You have an integrated video and audio experience, and you can see my brother Tyrone Gathers stuff in his mouth in the corner. I don't mess with you, man. Every time you step in, if you don't vote, you are pushing their agenda. Hey, that's 100% right.
I like that.
And that's a message that I wish more people would get. Hey, folks sit at home and they say,
but the one above that is even better.
Which one?
They're not selected, they elected.
Both of these is valid, right? So when you talk about they're selected and not elected, yes, we have political regimes. Yes. Now to tie this into what we're talking about. So Amendment 1, where did that come from? Because remember, we just said selected, not elected. Right. So where did Amendment 1 come from? Did Amendment 1 come from a desire of Missourians, whether that's the rural community or the inner city communities or the suburban communities? Did they come together and say, hey, our redistricting process is right. We need to change our redistricting process because we're not getting the type of congressional people. We're not getting the type of representatives that's actually representing our area. Now, if they didn't, And I'm pretty sure they didn't, because I haven't been in any community so far that they was like, hey, we came up with this idea. I haven't talked to anybody from the rural area that's like, you know what, Brandon, we really hate the redistricting aspect. We need to change this.
Right.
Well, who did it come from? It came from those that seek to control elections and make money, right? Because the only benefit of having an equal partisan district is to increase the type of political dogma around elections, to increase
What was that word?
dogma around elections, right?
Okay.
Which goes back to the selector. Let's look at our average elected official. So again, harping on our Senator Claire McCaskill. And full disclosure, and I know I shouldn't tell people this, but I'm probably not going to vote for either one of the senators, because I don't believe in voting for the lesser of good evil. That's just dumb to me, right? If I got two bad choices, I'd rather leave both of them on the table. Why do I want to put
Either one.
I don't want neither one. You give me two dirty cups, I'm just gonna sit there and not drink. I don't need to drink out of a dirty glass because I only have two glasses to drink out of. No, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna find me another glass of water to drink out of. I'm gonna find me something that's not gonna be harmful to
because both of those are harmful.
Depending on your perception, right? My perception of harm is when I have somebody that's supposed to represent me that I can't talk to. Then you can't represent me, right? So if you are 100% against me, and I know you're 100% against me, using Josh Hawley as an example, I know he's a Republican that's not going to vote 90% for anything that I want, right? I know this.
Right.
I know this.
Right.
But the other person ain't showing me nothing either.
That's true.
So I'd lose nothing.
All right, I sent
You
him a
not
message.
rocking with me, you not rocking with me. So I might as well find somebody who's going to rock with. And this is what we've been seeing in this senatorial election. We've been seeing in the senatorial election a whole bunch of outreach to a so-called minority community that's not engaged in this process. And they're not engaged in this process because we're stupid. We're not engaged in this process because we don't want overt change. We're not engaged in this process because we don't believe in it. And we don't believe in it because of the type of people that have been selected and not elected.
Yeah.
Right. But then that goes back to us too, because we can't have it both ways. We can't sit here and say that I'm not part of democracy, but then I'm controlled by all of the rules of democracy. And the rules of engagement is voting and then participation.
Participation. Yeah.
So without that, you're subject to being a colonized citizen, and you deserve to be a colonized citizen, because the rules of America is ownership. I don't care if you're a marginalized citizen or not. I don't care if you like me because I'm black or you hate me because I'm black. That don't mean nothing. Because see, if I own my house, yeah, and Missouri's a stand your ground territory. Yeah, no, it is. So that means my property is my property. You don't have to like me for me to enjoy the pursuit of happiness. I just need to understand what that pursuit of happiness is and how to actually obtain that, right? And we obtain that by controlling our institutions, controlling our economic destiny, controlling our political ideology, controlling our culturalistic marker. And a lot of this falls out from voting or the suppression of voting.
Yeah.
And we're seeing continuous efforts by the Republican Party, whether that's voter ID. Now we have this Clean Missouri that's coming out, and this is not the Republicans behind this, because surprisingly, a lot of Republicans I know is opposed to it, and a lot of Democrats is for it. I'm like, why? Why are we supporting something that does nothing but repackage clothes that I already have and then drastically changes my contract with my mortgage? You want to change the whole way that I pay my mortgage, and everything else I already have. I already have windows. Let me see if I missed some of the the governor's race. Yes, and I talked about that a little bit at the beginning with the voter suppression. Down there, we're seeing the reinvention of overt Jim Crow laws, and they're not even hiding it. They're not even ashamed about it, right? With the voter ID laws, we're seeing concealing of Jim Crow laws. We've seen the concealing of creating poll taxes again. And I say creating poll taxes with the voter ID because if I have to pay for a state ID, that's a fee. Then that changes my my right. I mean, that changes my privilege to a right, right? Because I have the privilege to vote underneath the Constitution. I have the right to get a state ID. That's a difference. right? One's a privilege, one's a right. When I go to the DMV and I pay for my driver's license, I just paid a fee to vote. That's called a poll tax by definition. Now, the suppression that we're seeing in Georgia, that we're seeing with her is it's off the chain. Like they purging people off the road. What was it, 50,000 people that they hit? Something like that.
It's roughly it, if not more.
And it's not even ashamed of it.
No.
Like, hey
They made
man,
it clear.
you can keep Oprah because we're not gonna let these folks vote. Which I find eye-opening. And I say it's eye-opening because I study a lot of history. And I used to wonder how people can sit there and people can get set on fire and folks can get hung.
And don't
People-
nobody else do nothing.
Don't nobody do nothing.
Right.
But I get it because I'm watching it today.
Right.
I'm watching people sit at home and say that, politics is what it is. Well, you ain't voting.
Yeah, it's just
And
been
we're
done in a
getting
different
laws that
manner
are
now.
changing. I'm watching laws that people thought ignorantly. And I say this being facetious and being cynical. I watched laws that people thought ignorantly was permanent. No, politics is transitional, right?
Okay.
So when we passed the Voting Right Act in 65, people said at home, oh man, we can vote now. Well, look at today. Now they're saying you have to have voting
This and that.
voting IDs, you have to be able to count the beans again, right? We got black people running for office, and we're saying that they shouldn't be allowed to run because
Same
they're
thing.
monkeys and this, and that. And this is public commentary. We got a president that says whatever he wants to say, and then we justify it because people are making money, and those people are making money want to remain comfortable.
That's true.
And the other folks that feel like we're disconnected goes back to understanding the rules of engagement. We're only disconnected if we give away our power. We're only disconnected if I
you're
let
right.
somebody else get in
You're
that
right.
car and
You're right.
drive.
You're
I'm
right.
gonna grab the steering wheel. We ain't going
Grabbing
nowhere.
something. I'm grabbing something.
We going in circles.
Yeah.
We never leaving Prospect. we not. I don't understand how the black people still want to be a part of a capitalist country. All right. Well, this is a deep one. I don't know if I got enough time to go all the way into detail. You listen to What's Real Talk KUAW. Call-in number is area code 816-599-6893. If you're listening to it on my Facebook page, you can go to the KUAW LPFM 98.5. But I want to get back to that though. I
think that'd be something we can hit on another day
Hey,
because that's deep.
no, it is,
Yeah,
and it's something I was sitting at home thinking about. Right. So I've been getting various calls this last week for potential placement in leadership, right, in the Democratic Party. So I'm talking to some of the folks and I'm going in and I'm thinking about people that I'm cool with, and I'm just kind of giving a complete oversight. And I started thinking about some of my libertarian friends. And with my libertarian friends, I was like, it's really not too much difference with government, except one doesn't trust government completely, and they want to get rid of government. I'm painting in the broad brush, right? 'Cause not all libertarians is underneath the same broad brush, but they want to get rid of government completely. The other group doesn't trust government, but chooses to be dependent, which is dangerous, right? So I'm gonna hit you with what I mean. So a lot of my libertarian friends, they believe in homeschool, right? When I was younger, I thought homeschool parents was crazy. Like, man, I go down to the community center, I see all these kids sitting in the circle, and you don't look like you should be teaching, just off of optics, right? But then I talk to folks from our community, and they always talk about, well, these schools is horrible. They don't teach us our education. My kids aren't getting the type of curriculum that I want them to get. Well, which one is better? Is it better for me to disengage with an entity that I believe is overtly harmful and then start creating my own entity, which actually goes back to the rules of engagement of America? Malcolm talked about something similar when he was talking about we shouldn't be fighting for reparations. We should be getting 25 states and calling it a day. Like, man, give us 25 states, leave us alone. Right? Which goes back to the 40 acres in the mule, etc. So I definitely want to get deep into the conversation about the capitalistic country, and then I'll touch on some socialism. We may actually be able to do that next show, but it's a conversation that needs to come about. And the last thing I would like to say before we cut off, just because I went there, a few years ago, I started trying to create a coalition between the Rural Caucus, the Rural Conservative Caucus, and the Black Caucus. because I've seen a lot of similarities in issues, not necessarily similarity in overt appreciation for the American institution, right? Because a lot of my libertarian friends, they staunch in the Constitution. The Constitution is the greatest thing in America. I'll be like, hold on, bro.
So what was
They-
some similarities that you were seeing?
Now when we talk about social conditions, poverty, law enforcement,
Okay.
overt government intrusion,
Okay.
right? So I use example. I've been working on child support law.
Right.
Well, some of my colleagues on the other side, they got issues, but it's not the same as mine.
Right.
But they got, it's government. Oh, hey, I got the same problem,
Yeah, right.
right? So when we talk about being politically savvy and linking and not being politically suppressed, we got to stop buying into the dogma of political partisanship and fictitious politicians. So again, I'm no on 1 through 7, the county questions. I'm no on Amendment 1 because it seeks to alter the redistricting process. I'm yes on Amendment 2, which is the medical marijuana, even though I don't support medical marijuana, because on the federal level, they require you lose your rights to firearms, right? Number 3 is mute. It doesn't matter if you pass it. We pass number 1. Number 3 is irrelevant. The minimum wage I'm leaving up to people, but I'm cautioning folks to understand that if you pass a minimum wage, there's a certain thing called the cliff effect, and the cliff effect goes to folks that don't make or start to make more than whatever their social services they're cut off. And I know I'm talking fast because you've been listening to What's Real Talk. My station manager Terrence is wrapping me up, man. Thank you again. Check us out. We on the 1st and 3rd Sundays every week. Every month, yeah. What I say every week? I did say every week.
We need another hour. We need another hour, man, because we were rolling there, man.